Okay, so yesterday I ended with this because I needed to sharpen my pencils. So I'm going to go in and add just a shade darker with my orange for a base. Okay, it's going to be basically the same as we did with the little pumpkin. Just getting my base to be a little bit darker. I am going to add yellow on top, but it'll be less yellow than we're on these two. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with my yellow. It's going to be brighter up here. And I'm going to let it fade in to my orange. Okay, just let it fade out into the orange. All right, I'm going to take my red orange and I'm going to start going in and adding some shadows along the bottom as well as near the dent of the pumpkin, like the lines. Notice how I press down a little bit lighter when I get towards the middle because I don't want that to be as dark. It's going to be dark over here, and then I let it fade into the orange, so I'm not pressing down as dark when I get towards the middle. Press down hard here and then let up a little bit. Okay, and I want it to fade into it. So even up here, even though I'm still adding some of the red, notice how it's darker, much darker down here than it is up here. So I'm still adding it towards the crease, but I don't want it to be as dark so that it gives that illusion of it being a 3D object, where the shading is a little bit darker down here than it is up towards the top. I'm going to go back in with my orange so that this area here in the middle where you're seeing a lot of the white paper, I don't want to see any of that white of the paper. So I'm just going to kind of come back in. And you might notice that you have to go into some of your other areas and add some more shading with your red and stuff like that, just because it's starting to kind of blend together and you don't want that. So like in here, I might go in with my red orange so that it makes it stand out from so like right over here. Go in with my red orange, just so on those really deep dark areas, it'll help make it stand out a little bit. It helps it give it that rounded look. Alright, so now I'm going to continue this, and I might even go in here a little bit more with my yellow, just so that it doesn't go where it doesn't. I want to make sure that's nice and vibrant, so it's like the highlight of the pumpkin. Yeah, I like that better. Alright, so now I'm going to go over here with this one. I'm going to use my orange again. I'm going to darken up my original section, and then that's when I'm going to start adding in my red orange and probably even start adding in some of the darker red but I'm going to start off with just my orange, making it just a little bit darker for my base. So that I'm taking some of that white that we're seeing from the paper out. You don't want to go too dark because you still want your paper to be able to accept more color, and if you oversaturate it, you're really not going to be able to get those colors to blend well. Okay, so I just got it a little bit darker. So now I'm going to go back in with my red orange, and I'm going to, especially on this left hand side, I'm going to start adding in more of my shadows with my red orange and towards the bottom. So remember, it's dark at first, and then as I get up closer towards the middle, it starts to, I press down less with my pencil, not as hard, so that it gets a little bit lighter. Right up against the little pumpkin though, it's going to be darker because we want, it's almost as if it's creating that shadow. Okay, and of course because it's on the left hand side and our light source is coming from the right. So not as much of the light is going to hit this part of the pumpkin. Darkest over here. Alright, I'm going to go in with my yellow where the highlight would be. I'm going to let that fade into my pumpkin. So it's dark up here, and then it fades into the pumpkin. I'm going to go back in with some orange to mix with my red. Mix with that yellow. Because like I said, I really don't want to see a lot of the white from the paper. I really want to make sure that it's nice and colorful and how that's coming. So now this next one is going to have, again, I'm going to make the dark base, okay, and then it's going to have a lot more of this red orange, and then this side is going to have a lot more of this dark red, okay. So base a lot darker. I just kind of use the side of my pencil to just get a nice even tone. So when it is kind of blocked off by the little pumpkin, don't forget to do the bottom portion at the same time. So like if you have a spot like this where the bottom of your pumpkin shows, don't forget about it, because then it's going to look awkward that it's like not the right tone or not the right darkness. Okay, so that's a good base. So now I'm going to use my red orange over here. Now, like I said, I'm probably going to go back in with my darker red later on, but I always start with the lighter colors. That way it kind of builds it up. Okay, I want to fade it in. I never want to make it look like an outline. When you have it look like an outline, it just doesn't look realistic. So I want it to look, you know, like if I've got a line there, then the shading needs to get up to that darkness. You don't want it just to be a line. Okay. So now, like I said, I'm going to use my darker red. I'm going to come in here. I might put, if I'm going to do any yellow, it's going to be right up here. And that's going to be kind of it. And then I'll let that fade in. So that it's just kind of right up here, and that's it. Now I'm going to take my dark red. Fade into it. It should never be a harsh line. It should always kind of fade into the rest of it. Same thing over here. This really needs to be dark because this is, you know, not on the lower part of the pumpkin, but it's also blocked. It's in shadow. Okay. All right, so now for the last little orange part, I'm going to go in, get my base a little bit darker. Still try to keep it even. You don't want to get too dark. You don't want it to start looking scribbly. It should stay nice and even. All right, now I'm going to go in with my red orange. And I'm going to need to go in with my dark red. So now, because of the fact that it's really kind of saturated in here, I'm having to push a lot harder with my color pencil to get that color to go on there. It's like it doesn't want to allow it. Okay, I am going to add just a little bit of yellow up here, but really not much at all. Okay, all right, so I'm happy with the way that looks so far. So the only thing I would say that if I was going to change anything about this, it would be in this area here, the fact that I can still see a lot of white of my paper. I don't really like that. So I'd go in here with some of my orange to kind of touch that up. So if your pumpkin doesn't look like that, then good. If it does, then you might want to go in with some of your orange, some of your yellow, especially like on this side I've got a lot that I can go back in with yellow to really kind of fill that in. I don't want it to look like it's unfinished. I want it to look completely, you know, saturated, filled in, not pastel, you know. Sometimes the way the camera hits it, it makes it even more pastel looking. Where the camera really picks up the white of the paper, but don't want that. Okay, so that looks better to me. All right, so now I want to do this stem. So I'm going to start the same way I did with my other one, where I'm going to take my light green first and kind of get like a nice little base for the color of the stem. So I'm just going to lightly shade in my stem with my light green. Now, you know, different stems are different colors, so if you're working from an actual pumpkin or a picture of a pumpkin that you're looking at, you can literally just use the colors that you see. Since mine's more from imagination than anything else, I'm gonna, you know, design one. So I'm gonna use the same kind of color scheme as that one. All right. I don't want to lose my lines that I gave myself ahead of time. However, I am going to be darkening the areas on either side of the line so that will make it look like the area with the line actually sticks out and the area next to the line is what's pushed in. Okay, so I'm taking my dark green, kind of going out next to my line, and notice how it gets wider here. And then it's thinner when it goes up there. So same thing here, it's going to be wider. I'm basically, there's my line, I'm going next to my line and leaving a little space so that there will be a little highlight where it sticks up, where the light will catch it more. Okay. Same thing here. Okay, and same thing. This side's going to be lighter anyway, so I'm not going to go quite as dark with my dark green. I'm going to leave that like that. So now I'm going to add in, so since we imagine that this is where the light's coming from, that side, imagine that this side of the stem is going to be brighter and lighter, especially up towards the top, but especially over here, this part of the stem. I'm going to go back in it with green because I don't want it to come off as yellow, but I'm just kind of given where my highlights will be. So now I can go back in. Highlight that back to green with my light green color pencil. And remember, I'm going to go back in with like browns to really get the darks dark. So I'm going to take a brown color pencil. There it is. Brown color pencil, and kind of, especially these darker areas, kind of add those ridges in there. This is where you can start to get the texture of the stem to kind of show. So I'm not pushing down as hard on this side because this is the lighter side, but I am still adding some because in those darker areas it might look a little bit brown. This helps give it that kind of ridged texture that the pumpkin stem has. Alright, I'm just going back in, adding more green on top so that really seals it all together. And I want to make sure I don't have a white line. Like there shouldn't be a white line at the top where these two meet. So right now I'm kind of seeing a little bit of white, so I might go in there and make sure that that area all has the shading of the pumpkin. I don't want it to become an outline. So make sure it's blended in with your yellow or your red orange. Okay. All right, so I like that so far. I can see that same white outline, as you can see. So I'm going to take my green and make sure that my stem has that green going all the way down. And then I'm going to go in with my orange, blend it in with my red, and blend it in with my yellow so that I'm not left with any kind of white outline or white halo where the stem meets my pumpkin. That's definitely not what I want. Okay? All right, so I like that. So now, for my shadow, I am going to use the purple. Now, you can pick what color you'd like your table to be, and then you can choose, you know, I wouldn't choose a warm color, so don't do reds, oranges, or yellows, but you could do a blue, you could do green. You don't want this whole thing to become too green, so I would pick either like a blue or a purple, to be honest. It'll look better. But I'm going to just kind of lightly fill in from that table line that we created. During your checkpoint 1, you should have had a table line. And then now I'm just kind of lightly shading in. Don't color on top of your pumpkin. Just go right next to it. Okay. Notice I'm doing sideways strokes. I'm not going up and down. I'm not going in a curve. I don't want you to make it look like your table is bumpy. Okay, so just kind of keep it straight lines, horizontal lines. So now obviously there's some marks on my table, so I always get these little dark marks. Sadly, that's between glue and just wear and tear from my desk from over the years, but I'm just giving the light base at first, and then I'm going to go into that area that we already drew in for where our shadow is going to be, and that will get shaded in nice and dark. Sorry, now is the time where I'm going to get rid of these extra pieces of paper. Okay. So I'm getting a dark line from it. Okay, I had extra pieces of paper to kind of alleviate some of those dark marks, but all right, so now I know my shadow is going from here. Remember we talked about it, that's going to be at an angle. So from here and here. Okay, so that's going to be where my shadow is. So all this area is going to be darker. It's especially going to be really dark in this area, because there's going to be no light being able to get into that area. So here, right up against your pumpkin, is going to be darkest. As it comes out away, it's going to get a little bit lighter. So really dark, pretty dark, less, still, you know, it's still going to be pretty dark, but just not going to be as dark as it is right up against your pumpkin. Okay. Here, and I'm drawing it doing the shading horizontally because it will allow it to flatten out. It's not as dark here because it's going to have more light than it is over here. I'm not pausing to sharpen the pencil anymore because last time I did that, I couldn't get back to the video and I had to do a new video. So that is why. All right. All right, so again, very dark over here. Okay. Very dark. Hmm? Okay, so very dark right up against here. It gets a little bit lighter as it gets away from the pumpkin. But it doesn't blend into the regular table because there's still going to be a shadow there even if it's a little bit lighter. Okay, your shadow should not have an outline, so the outer edge of your shadow should not be darker than the inner edge. So if you're seeing an outline, then you need to go back in and kind of make sure that your shading gets at least up to that darkness so that you don't have an outline. I tend to, like when you get the dust from your pencil, it works better to just blow the dust away rather than to smudge it, because you might smudge your whole artwork. Okay. Okay. So you're not seeing it as well, but this area here is also evenly colored. I just noticed on the camera it's not picking up as well. It's really picking up a lot of the white. You need to make sure that it's not so light that when you take a picture of it, I won't be able to tell that you actually colored your table. Your table needs to have color too. It's not just the shadow. The table has color, and then whatever the color is, you color that darker for your shadow. So for my table, it's purple. So it's just a little bit darker. Now it can be lighter on the light side, but I still should be able to tell that you've shaded it in nice and evenly. Okay, And that's pretty much it. That is your checkpoint 2 of your 6th grade colored pumpkins.